Well, first of all, let's just get something straight. Just because something happens and it's natural doesn't mean it's good. 200 years ago, we thought you get cancer, you go home, pack your stuff, and can't do much about it. But you develop medicines and you try to stop pain and suffering. So that, I regard aging as a disease, one that's treatable. And that mindset is very important here. What is aging? Well, people have been trying to figure that out since before the pyramids or even, first block laid down there. So we don't know 100%, but what I put forth in my book is a new theory that has become one of the hottest theories in the field. And that's the idea that it's not just things going wrong willy-nilly. If you boil it down, actually, you can make it into a mathematical equation. It's a loss of information. And I think it's a good time, and the reason that it's being received well is because we live in an information age. 50 years ago, people didn't really understand what that meant. But today we can understand that if the body's like a computer and the drives get corrupted or the chips get corrupted and slow down, that's aging. And that what I think we can do is to reboot the system and reinstall new software and get it to work really well. And that's what we're working on in my lab, which is to reinstall software into body parts. And we're finding that those body parts become young again, literally, and work again like they were young. If you want a biology lesson, you can read my book. I'm not going to go too much into it, but the way to think of the body is that there's two types of information. One is the DNA, which we all know. That's a digital form of information, very robust. It's the reason we can talk through the internet. The other part of the information, the other type in our body, unfortunately, is analog. Records, cassette tapes. This is not the kind of information that lasts for a long time, and we call that not the genetic, but the epigenetic information. And that's the part that I believe gets corrupted most rapidly. Now, the good news is, though, let me switch analogies. It's not the best, but probably everyone knows what a CD is at this point. The music on a CD or the photos, that's digital information. But if you scratch the CD, that's like aging. The epigenome, the reading of the information is messed up. You can't read it. So songs skip. And in the body, the equivalent is that the genes that should be on and off in each part of the body, your brain has to have a different set of genes on compared to your liver, because otherwise the cells are going to be the same. We all have the same DNA in our cells. So now that hopefully you understand what I think is going on, the scratches on the CD, we've been looking to polish the CD. So that's, a different analogy, but one that I think is apt. And what we do is we use gene therapy at this point. We turn on 3 particular genes that are normally only turned on in embryos to develop a very robust, healthy child. We turn them on in adult animals. So we're taking mice. They're old. They can't see. They're blind. And we put those 3 genes into the back of the eye. We turn them on for 3, 4, 5 weeks. We can go as long as we want. And the eyes, they go back in time. The retina, the optic nerves literally become young. They don't just get healthier. We measure their age. We can measure that. We can measure the scratches. And when they're young, they get their eyesight back fully. First time that's been done to actually reverse aging. We think that we can do that probably in many other tissues. We're working on hearing loss, some early results. We're going to work on other parts of the body, so spleen, liver. And the most exciting part, the one that keeps me up at night, is whole body rejuvenation. Imagine a world where you either take a pill or a gene therapy, you fill your body with these 3 embryonic genes, and then you take an antibiotic or some drug that turns it on. That's how we do it in the mice. We give them a doxycycline to turn it on, and then your doctor monitors you. Okay, you've gone back far enough in age. I'm 51. 3 weeks later, okay, David, you've gone back to 35. Do you want to keep going? Yeah, give me another 10 years. Go back. Stop it. You don't want to go too far. And then, you arrange another visit 20 years later. So that's what we're talking about theoretically, though it's early days because we're still in mice. What we've discovered is, my colleagues and I, is that the information to be young, the DNA, is largely intact in our body. We didn't realize that. So the hardware is all there. The main information, digital, is there. It just doesn't get used. And what that means is that we can tap into it, that aging is far more reversible than we ever thought. And this epigenome has become one of the hottest things in biology right now, because you're right, it is affected by how we live. And when you are overweight, you don't exercise, you spend 20/20 sitting in a chair like a lot of us did, that affects your epigenome. And in good and bad ways, there are longevity genes that we study that if you have a sedentary lifestyle, don't eat the right foods, those longevity genes get switched off and they don't protect your body. Conversely, you don't smoke, you exercise, you eat rarely, I skip a meal at least a day, then the longevity genes come on and protect your body and stop those and slow down those scratches from occurring. But here's one thing most people don't realize. We tend to think our DNA is our destiny. That's totally wrong when it comes to aging. And we know this from studying tens of thousands of people, measuring their clock over time. 80% of what you experience in aging depends on how you live your life. And only 20% is your DNA from your parents. And that really is motivational. It should be to do all the right things. Well, they're inextricably linked.
Yeah.
Obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's, even cancer. These are manifestations of aging. And let's talk about obesity just for a second. It's known that the clock of aging ticks faster if you're overweight, right? And so it's not that obesity is just the problem. It's that your obesity is accelerating your aging. And that's why obesity causes a whole range of diseases, including cancer. Your body clock is ticking. So if you can lose that weight and your body clock will slow down. But the other thing to think about is, what is the root cause of most suffering on the planet? What is the root cause of disease? Well, we know that for cancer, for example, the majority of the risk for cancer is aging, the processes that drive aging. We forget about that. We try to treat cancer after it occurs. We forget about the preceding 50 years that lead up to that typically. And you can have a big difference on your cancer rates. I'll give you one example. So my mother died of lung cancer. She smoked, which accelerated her clock. It mutated her DNA as well, which was not helpful. But her risk of getting cancer because of smoking went up 5-fold above the average person, whereas going from age 20 to 70 increases your risk more than 200-fold. So which is more important to work on, smoking or cancer? Well, I'd say do both, but we ignore the major cause of cancer in the world. Well, I have personal experience of that. When I wrote my book, which took 10 years, but I was literally sitting for about 18 months every day and night, I ended up suffering. My health went, I could barely walk because my piriformis muscle atrophied and then seized up. It was in a cramp for 6 months. And that's the muscle that goes through that hole in your pelvis. And it took me 6 months of exercise and therapy to get back to walking again. So I've switched over to having a standing desk. It's right next to me, just here. I go on a lot of walks. So why is sitting so bad? Well, first of all, your heart rate doesn't go up. You're basically at minimal basal heart rate, which is bad. Second of all, if your major muscles atrophy, if you're a man, you can have less testosterone. But even for women, that lack of muscle bulk is super bad. Not just because your hormones are diminished, but particularly those people who are my age and older, if you have weak muscles, it's super bad because A, it's very hard to get them back. It took me a lot of work, and it's harder the older you get. But the number one, or maybe one of the top 5, not number one, but one of the major causes, preventable causes of death, is falling over and breaking your leg or your hip. And you've got to keep those muscles that are required for standing really strong so that if you fall, you don't break, you just bounce.